What is up, guys? This is Joe with Optics, and today we're talking about why we love indie comics and why we think you should try them out if you haven't already. Now, a bit of background. I spent years avoiding them, mostly because I was too distracted with the main comic publishers, but over time as community became more toxic, Ash and I became less eager to read comics. Luckily, I had a lot of people giving me a bunch of suggestions. Before this point, I only read a handful of indie comics, and I did love them. So after years of being yelled at, I finally started Saga, and that triggered the spiraling out of control for more stories. Now, I have some friends.
That's surprising.
Hush. I have some friends who love stories, but they refuse to read comics because of Marvel and DC is just too big and intimidating for them. And this is a very valid reason for some. And it can be incredibly intimidating when you have no idea where to begin or what stories, and especially if you just want a continuous story. But the problem doesn't really exist with indie titles. Some have side stories, but everything is still rather easy to follow, even if it is a larger story. To expand on this point, one of the reasons why I love indie comics are the fact that the worlds can be so small or vast. In a series like Azola, the world doesn't feel too intimidating, yet Saga, while being a reasonably short series, feels massive with all the worlds you visit, or even Bone feels rather large as well. Isola focuses on a queen and one of her people who are helping her to undo a spell that was cast on her, while Saga is like Romeo and Juliet had a baby with Star Trek. A race is at war, and a person on each side meet and have a baby, and then when people find out about it, they want them dead. Now Bone. Bone is often compared to Lord of the Rings and things like that just because how vast it is, and I really shouldn't be going into much more than that without going into spoilers, which I will not do here. My next point is that there can be more consequences. For example, Saga, or another one that comes to mind, is Tokyo Ghost. Both had good plot twists and made you genuinely scared for the characters, Saga especially. Without going into spoilers, Saga, it's never scared to just kill off characters, big or small. There are also choices that affect other characters that oftentimes would kind of be ignored, especially in mainstream comics. While big comics are great, there isn't really fear for those characters anymore, and usually if those comics do kill a main character, it's either advertised beforehand or it doesn't last that long. But in indie comics, that is not the case. Going back to Saga.
That's gonna happen a lot for this video.
Definitely. We read it by the trade, and I still remember the trade that I almost started bawling my eyes out, and Ash cried so much it took me months to persuade her to continue reading because of just how devastated she was.
Because that shizme was depressing!
Another reason we love indie comics are that they are very well made and developed. It was a very big stereotype that these were, just because they're independent comics, not as good as something else, and that is far from the truth. A lot of people I've talked to told me that because they just assumed independent meant just lesser quality. The story can be just as good, if not better, and same with the art. Actually, there are some indie stuff that I like better than the big guys. For example, Isola has some beautiful and breathtaking artwork with the way they use colors and line art and everything. When I first read that story, I can't tell you how many times I just stopped and stared and was just mesmerized by this artwork. I also love the extreme variety of styles for indie comics. I still remember walking through a bookstore and seeing the cover for the complete version of Tokyo Ghost. The cover actually made me stop what I was doing and begin looking into it. I also love it because it helps me remember all of them because how different the styles are. The styles help you fall in love with the stories as well. For example, I Hate Fairyland has a comedic and very animated look to it, which amplifies that story. Isola uses his beautiful colors and artwork to really pulls you and elevates the level of fantasy for that world. The crazy art line for Tokyo Ghost makes the unique story go to all types of new heights. Of course, we have to mention Saga as well.
The awesome art of every character in Alien makes it feel like it's freaking Star Wars or Star Trek.
They're also on different platforms. Some are on a usual way, like your phone and in trade, but there are also webcomics as well, like Dragon Sanctuary, that are updated regularly with a fantastic story and awesome people working behind it.
Okay, so we may be a little biased on this one because the creator does a Kingdom Hearts podcast and also works on one of our favorite TV shows, Archer.
Indie comics also have a very big age range as well as accessibility range. Bone, for example, is for all ages, but mostly aimed at kids, while Saga and Tokyo Ghost are definitely for a more mature audience.
There's so much skin.
There also isn't just regular comic stories. Many regular books have also been adapted into graphic novels as well, which is really cool because you get a visual for that story. We just recently picked up the Way of Shadows graphic novel, and we can't wait for the Protector Saga to start being released in this way as well.
It's also great to see indie comics begin getting more adaptations, like Lock and Key, Umbrella Academy, The Walking Dead, and most recently Bloodshot, with plenty more in the talks like Oblivion Song and Bone.
So those are just some of the reasons we love indie comics and why we think you guys should definitely read them as well.
Trust me, guys, we could totally talk about this all day.
There's definitely an indie comic for everyone. Let us know down below if you guys read indie comics, and if so, what are some of your favorites? Also, don't forget to do all that YouTube crap that helps us out. Anyways, thanks guys, and we'll see you guys next time.